The eviction notice came the same day my boss stopped calling. I stood in the doorway holding both pieces of paper, one in each hand, and I knew deep down something had broken. Not outside, inside. Until that week, I still believed things would turn around. Not quickly, not dramatically, just enough to breathe again. That was all I wanted. A little mercy, a little relief, a little proof that God had not forgotten my address. But life had been tightening for months. First, the company delayed salaries. Then they delayed them again. Then meetings became strange. Too much whispering. Too many closed doors. Too many fake smiles from management. Everyone knew something was wrong. Nobody said it clearly. We kept showing up anyway. What else could we do? I woke early, ironed shirts carefully, spent money on transport I should have been saving, sat at my desk pretending work was normal. Faith stayed with me through all of that. Quietly, weakly, but it stayed. I prayed on buses. I prayed during lunch breaks. I prayed in the office restroom with my hands shaking over the sink. Lord, keep this door open. Lord, please do not let me lose this job. Lord, I do not have a backup plan. That last part was the truth. I had no backup plan. Rent was due. My savings were already wounded. And the room I lived in was small, but it was mine. A narrow bed, one plastic chair, a metal wardrobe that never closed properly, a window that stuck during the rainy season. It was not much, but it held my life together. After long days, I came home to that room and breathed. Sometimes I read my Bible there. Sometimes I cried there. Sometimes I sat in darkness and listened to the fan shake above me. It was the only place where I did not have to pretend. Then the job ended. Not with dignity. Not with warning. We were called into a short meeting on a Tuesday afternoon. The manager kept clearing his throat. Would not hold eye contact. Would not stop saying words like restructure and temporary difficulty. Then he told us half the staff were being let go. Effective immediately. My name was on the list. I remember nodding like I understood, as if my body was trying to protect me from the full meaning. People around me were talking. Some angry. Some stunned. One woman started crying openly. I heard none of it clearly. I packed my things into a small carton. A mug. 2 notebooks. A phone charger. A framed scripture card I kept beside my screen. God will make a way. I almost laughed when I saw it. Not because I stopped believing, because the timing felt cruel. I left the building before anyone could give me pity. That was the one thing I could not bear. On the bus home, I kept staring out the window. Lagos moved like nothing had happened. Cars, horns, street sellers, people negotiating prices like the world was stable. Mine was not. When I got to my room, the landlord's son was waiting outside. That alone unsettled me. He was never the one who came. It was always the landlord himself. Slow voice, tired eyes, but polite. This time it was the son. Younger, sharper, less patient. He handed me the paper and said, "Uncle said you should read it." Then he left. Just like that. I opened it slowly, already knowing. Final notice. Rent overdue. Grace period exhausted. Vacate the premises within days. I read it twice. Then a third time. My hands were cold by then. I went into my room, closed the door, sat on the bed, and placed both papers beside me. Job gone. Home going. For a long time I did not cry. I just sat there. Sometimes shock is dry. Too deep for tears at first. Night came slowly. The room darkened. The fan kept shaking overhead. Someone outside played music too loudly. A baby cried in the next building. Life continued around me. Inside that room, everything had stopped. I tried to pray later. I really did. I knelt beside the bed like I had done so many times before. Folded my hands. Closed my eyes. Nothing came out. Not because I had no words. Because I had too many. Anger. Fear. Embarrassment. Exhaustion. How do you put all that into one prayer? So I sat back down. And sometime past midnight, I finally whispered, "Lord, what now?" That was it. No fire. No long speech. No confidence. Just what now? The next few days were ugly. I made calls I hated making. Asked questions that stripped my pride. Sent messages I had rewritten 3 times before sending. Most replies were kind, but useless. I will let you know. Things are tight right now. I wish I could help. A few people did help with transport money. One friend sent food. Another promised to ask around for jobs. I was grateful. Truly. But gratitude does not erase panic. By Friday, I had started packing little things into bags. Not because I had somewhere to go, because staying unprepared made the fear worse. I folded shirts, stacked books, wrapped plates in old newspaper. Each item felt like evidence against me. This was my life, reduced to what could fit into bags. That evening, while packing, I found an old notebook under the bed. I almost threw it aside. Then I opened it. It was a prayer journal from better days. Back when I still wrote full pages. Back when hope came easier. Back when I believed every delay had a neat purpose. I flipped through entries slowly. Some prayers had been answered. I could see that now. Others still hung there unfinished. Requests from another version of me. Then I found one line I had written a year earlier. Even if everything falls apart, do not let me lose the sense that you are near. I had forgotten writing that. But the sentence found me hard. Because that was exactly what I was losing. Not just income. Not just housing. Nearness. God had started feeling far. Not absent enough to deny. Just distant enough to hurt. Then the first strange thing happened. That night, as I was sealing one of the bags, the power went out. The room fell dark immediately. I sat still for a second, too tired to move. Then from outside my window, I heard someone singing. Softly. Not performing. Just singing. I could not place the voice. Old or young, I could not tell. But the song was one my mother used to sing when I was small. Why are you afraid? I am with you still. My chest tightened. That was not a popular chorus. Not one I had heard in years. I stood and moved toward the window carefully. But the curtain was stuck halfway. And by the time I pulled it back, the singing had stopped. The compound was dark. Only one security bulb glowed near the gate. No one was there. I told myself it could have been from another building, or someone's radio, or memory playing tricks. Still, I did not sleep well. The next morning brought worse news. A company I had been hopeful about rejected me. A relative I thought might help set his house was already full. And the landlord himself arrived in the afternoon to remind me that Monday was the deadline. Monday. He was not cruel. That almost made it harder. He stood by the door with an apologetic face and said, "You know how things are." I nodded, because I did know. Then he left me there with the finality of Monday sitting in the room. That evening, I walked farther than usual. No destination, just movement. Sometimes walking made the thoughts quieter, at least for a little while. I passed my church without entering. I could not face people, could not face cheerful greetings, could not face questions. So I kept walking until the streets grew less familiar. Eventually, I sat on a low concrete edge near a closed shop. Cars moved past. Generators hummed from nearby houses. The sky had that dusty orange look just before darkness takes over. And there, with no strength left to sound spiritual, I prayed. Lord, I have nothing. I swallowed hard. Then I said it again. I have nothing left. No job. No home. No plan. If you do not come now, I do not know where I go from here. Tears came then. Hot. Immediate. Uninvited. I bent forward and covered my face. Not because people were watching. Because the shame felt physical. After a minute, I heard footsteps stop near me. I wiped my face quickly and looked up. An older woman stood a few feet away. Plain wrapper. Headscarf. A weathered face with calm eyes. She looked like someone's mother. Or grandmother. Ordinary in every visible way. She held a nylon bag in one hand. I expected her to ask for directions. Or money. Or the time. Instead, she said, "You are carrying too much alone." I froze. There are sentences that sound general. This did not. It landed too directly. I said nothing. She stepped a little closer. Not enough to alarm me. Just enough to be heard over the road. Then she said, "He says the room is ending, not your life." And the job left, but his hand did not. The air around me seemed to thin. I stared at her. My mouth moved before sense returned. I asked, "What did you say?" She repeated it almost exactly. "The room is ending, not your life." The job left, but his hand did not. My skin prickled. Because that morning, while packing, I had muttered a sentence into the empty room. Only once. Only to myself. Maybe this is the end of my life as I know it. No one heard that. No one. Yet here was this woman answering it. I stood slowly. My legs felt uncertain. My heart was suddenly racing. "Do I know you?" I asked. She smiled sadly. Not familiar. Not strange. Just certain. Then she reached into her nylon bag and pulled out a small folded paper. She handed it to me. I opened it immediately. Inside was a verse. Isaiah 43 verse 19. "See, I am doing a new thing." My throat closed. That was the same verse I had ignored that morning in my journal. Not because I did not see it. Because I was too angry to receive it. I looked up to ask her how she knew. But before I could speak, she said one more thing. "Go to church tonight. Do not go back to that room first. Someone is waiting." Then she turned and started walking. I stepped after her. Only 2 steps. A Danfo bus passed between us and sprayed dust into the air. People shouted. A motorcycle cut across the corner. It took maybe 3 seconds to clear. When it did, she was gone. Not far away. Gone. The road ahead was open enough to see. There was no junction close enough. No gate she could have entered that quickly. I spun around. Checked both sides. Nothing. My heart slammed against my ribs. Maybe another person would explain it away. Maybe I tried to. But the verse in my hand felt too real. So I went to church. Not because I felt brave. Because I had run out of reasons not to obey. It was not even service night. That mattered. The main auditorium was dim. Only a few lights on. I expected it to be locked. But one side door was open. Exactly as the woman had said. I stepped in quietly. At first I thought the place was empty. Then I heard voices from the front. 2 men from the prayer team sat with my pastor in the first row. Heads bowed. Talking softly. My pastor looked up and saw me immediately. And his face changed. Not surprise. Recognition. Like he had been expecting my arrival. That unsettled me all over again. He stood and walked toward me quickly. Then stopped right in front of me. Before I said a word, he asked, "Are your bags packed already?" I could not answer. My hands started shaking again. Because yes, my bags were packed. Not fully, but enough. No one knew that. I had told nobody. Tears came immediately. He guided me to a front bench and let me cry. No pressure. No questions at first. When I calmed enough to speak, I asked the only thing that mattered. "How did you know?" He sat down beside me and exhaled slowly. Then he said, "During afternoon prayer, your face kept coming to mind." I tried to ignore it, but it grew stronger. Then I heard one sentence very clearly. He paused. I stared at him. Then he said it. "Tell him not to return to that room alone." I felt the room tilt. That was exactly what the woman had told me. Exactly. Same meaning. Same timing. He continued. "So we stayed. We have been praying since evening. I even asked the men to keep one side door open. That was the twist. All day, I thought I was being abandoned. But while I was packing in despair, while I was walking without direction, while I sat crying near that closed shop, God had already moved people into position. The pastor kept talking, but I could barely hear. My mind was racing through every hour of that day. The verse, the woman, the open door, the packed bags he knew about somehow, the prayer meeting I never knew was happening. Then he said something that broke me completely. "We found somewhere for you to stay. Just temporarily for now. A family in church offered a room. And one of the brothers here knows about a job opening." I put both hands over my face and cried like a child. Not polite tears. Not grateful little tears. The kind that come when your body has carried fear too long and suddenly feels it loosen. That night, I did not go back to sleep in the room alone. The pastor came with me. One of the men came too. They helped me carry my bags out. That detail still matters to me. Not because the bags were heavy. Because I did not have to leave alone. The landlord watched from a distance. Said nothing. Maybe because the pastor was there. Maybe because grace had finally arrived with witnesses. I moved into a small spare room in a church member's house that same night. Not permanent. Not luxurious. But safe. A mattress. A clean sheet. A window that opened. A door I could close without panic. I sat on that mattress long after everyone slept. The room was unfamiliar. But peace was there. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt something I had nearly lost. Nearness. Not because every problem was solved. They were not. I still needed work. Still needed stability. Still needed healing from the shame of how quickly life had collapsed. But I knew one thing now. God had not missed me. The miracle was not only housing, not only the possibility of a new job. It was precision. He sent a stranger with a verse I had just rejected. He moved my pastor into prayer before I arrived. He arranged a room before I was thrown out. He answered the cry I thought was vanishing into the air. Days later, I asked around about the older woman. Nobody knew who I meant. I described her carefully. The wrapper, the scarf, the calm voice, the nylon bag. No one recognized her. One church mother even said something that still stays with me. She said, "Sometimes help looks ordinary on purpose." Maybe that is true. Maybe she was just a woman God used for one moment. Maybe I will understand someday. Maybe not. What matters is what happened after. Within 2 weeks, I got contract work. Not perfect, but enough to start breathing. A month later, that turned into something steadier. Slowly, the ground beneath me began to return. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to remind me that endings are not always endings. Sometimes they are forced exits from places grace has outgrown. Now when I think back to that season, I do not first remember the papers in my hands. I remember the sentence. The room is ending, not your life. That is what saved me. Because loss can sound final when it first arrives. It speaks like a judge. It names itself the end. But sometimes loss is only a doorway you would never have chosen. And God waits on the other side with open doors, praying people, and provision already moving toward your name. So if you are in a season where everything seems to be collapsing, hear me. A lost job is not the loss of your calling. A lost room is not the loss of your future. And a shutting door is not proof that God walked away. He still knows where you are. He still interrupts despair. He still sends help with terrifying precision. If this story reminded you that God can meet you in the middle of total collapse, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Because some miracles do not begin when life looks beautiful. They begin when everything falls apart.